Game of Thrones' opening scene scared the collective shit out of all of us while hooking us on the show, but I would argue that the scene in the book is even scarier while also being inspirational and acting as a thesis for the entire series. That's a big promise, but I think I can back it up. Now, the show scene and the book scene start off with a very similar premise. You have these three members of the Night's Watch all going beyond the wall and searching for wildlings. Garrett by my head, you have Will over here, and then you have Sir Waymar Royce up on top. Now, Garrett and Will are seasoned members of the Night's Watch. Garrett's been in the Watch for like 40 years. Will, I want to say it's like 5 or 6. But basically, they know what they're doing. They've been here for a while. Unfortunately for them, though, they are being led by Sir Waymar Royce. Now, the issue with Waymar is he is basically a child. He is 18 years old, and he's a cocky little shit. Now, if you're confused why he gets to be in charge, despite the fact that he is, an 18-year-old cocky little shit, it's because he is a name. His last name is Royce, so he comes from the Royce family in the Vale. They're an ancient house, but he is like the 4th or 5th son of that house. So there isn't much for him down there, so he joins the Night's Watch. But because he comes from an important family, and he's been raised in a castle and has all of this training, he expects to have a command befitting his lineage. So Garrett and Will obviously are not too happy about serving underneath him, especially since he doesn't seem to know what he's doing. Now, while we don't get all those details in the show, you get the basic gist. He's young and cocky but in charge, and then these two kind of know what they're doing. They have to listen to him. In the show, in the book, Will has, found the wildling camp. They are all dead. He has come back to tell the other two, there's dead, the ones we've been tracking, we can go home now. But Waymar's like, no, we're gonna go double check. I want to see them for myself because, I'm the one in charge here. And this is where, the book scene and the show scene kind of split off. So in the show, Will leads them to where he had found the wildlings all dead. They get there, they don't find the wildlings, so they all, split up and start looking around. Waymar and Garrett, they kind of go off together, and then Will looks off in a different direction. Waymar is being a prick. At one point, he turns around and, a White Walker stands up behind him and slice a dice. Garrett runs away, and then Will and Garrett are running through the woods. They run into each other just in time for Will to see Garrett get his head chopped off by the White Walker, and then, Will somehow survives. And I'm not shitting on it. This hooked me too. I was fully on board. But then in the book, this is where things go a little different. So in the book, Will is leading them to where he had found the bodies, but Will and Garrett can feel that there's something wrong in the woods. But Waymar is oblivious. He's cocky, he's not been in the Watch long, and so he doesn't believe that there's anything wrong going on. I'll read a little from the book, but basically they stop at one point because, they're feeling something, and Garrett said, there's something wrong here, Garrett muttered. The young knight, Waymar, gave him a disdainful smile. Is there? Can't you feel it? Garrett asked. Listen to the darkness. Will could feel it. 4 years in the Night's Watch, and he had never been so afraid. What was it? But Waymar's not going to have any of this superstitious nonsense, so he basically tells Garrett, fine, you're going to watch the horses, but no fire, because we're not going to let anyone know that we're here. Garrett is pretty freaked out. He's like, it would be smarter if there was fire. There's things out there, things that you don't know about. But Waymar is having none of it. So he tells Garrett, stay behind with the horses. Will, you go take me on foot and show me where the bodies are. But when they get there, just like in the show, the bodies are gone. And so Waymar, in his, prideful pig-headedness, is like, you know what? No, my first mission is not going to be a failure. We're going to start looking around for these bodies that you said were here because they fooled you. He tells Will to, climb a tree so he can get a look at the perimeter and then, call down what he sees. But it is then that Will, while he's in the tree, can really feel there is something wrong in the woods. And then it says, down below, the lordling called out suddenly, who goes there? Will heard uncertainty in the challenge. He stopped climbing. He listened. He watched. The woods gave answer. The rustle of leaves, the icy rush of the stream, a distant hoot of a snow owl. The others made no sound. I know I've read that before in another video, but it hits so hard. What an introduction! But anyway, Will doesn't answer him, though, because at this point, he is completely, frozen in the tree, out of terror. From his vantage point, he can see the movement in the trees that Waymar can't, and that plus, the feeling of the cold, that deep, deep, terror has, frozen him in place. Waymar doesn't know what's going on and goes, "Will, where are you?" Sir Waymar called up. "Can you see anything?" He was turning in a slow circle, suddenly wary, his sword in hand. He must have felt them as Will felt them. There was nothing to see. "Answer me. Why is it so cold?" It was cold. And it's at this point where, Will is frozen up in the tree, not communicating with Waymar, that Waymar on the ground sees the other walk up to him. Continuing, Will heard the breath go out of Sir Waymar Royce in a long hiss. "Come no farther," the lordling warned. His voice cracked like a boy's. He threw the long sable cloak back over his shoulders to free his arms for battle and took his sword in both hands. The wind had stopped. It was very cold. Now, as a modern audience, what are we expecting at this point? We're expecting what we got in the show, where, this pig-headed, cocky, entitled, arrogant teenager is going to get his comeuppance. And we think this because whether we're aware of it or not, we are trained to be looking for planting and payoff. They have planted that, this kid is crazy arrogant and is making dumb decisions that are putting them in danger. So what do we as an audience expect? We expect him to be, humiliated and punished for it because this is like such a huge character deficiency. It's what the show does, and if this was your introduction to this character, this seems like the natural conclusion. But George does something different. In the scene, Will is watching as the other begins to approach Waymar. And up until this point, we've heard, his voice is cracking like a boy, that he's scared, that there's this, apprehension in him. So what is going to happen next as this other is approaching? Sir Waymar met him bravely. "Dance with me then." He lifted his sword high over his head, defiant. His hands trembled from the weight of it, or perhaps from the cold. Yet in that moment, Will thought he was a boy no longer, but a man of the Night's Watch. I don't get moved to the point where I need to stop for a moment while reading super often, but this moved me. A lesser writer would not care about this throwaway character. They would see him as a simple means of introducing a threat. We would use his arrogance to plant the threat as well as, his eventual end, and then we would punish him for his arrogance. That is what a bit character who's only going to exist for one scene would typically be used for. But instead of letting him die like the immature coward that we would expect him to be, George gives him this brief moment of true heroism. Waymar Royce knows he's about to die, but he stands his ground and decides to fight anyway. And that's why I think this scene, beyond being truly inspiring, acts as George's thesis for the entire series. Humanity is complicated. Almost no one is purely black or white. We can see the villain of the scene, who has so clearly been shaped by entitlement and privilege, and who has up until this point shown only the bad sides of that, pull the nugget, that little piece of honor in the back of his head as a concept, and use it in that moment to draw strength and stand his ground and be brave. And I think Sir Waymar Royce acts as the model for all of the characters going forward. A villain can still have humanity, can still have moments of goodness or strive for goodness. The hero, who is inherently honorable, can have moments of dishonor, can have moments of slipping up, and they are still human. Because the point of these characters is that they're all human. And this is why I get annoyed when people either try to demonize a character fully or to completely whitewash a character, because none of them are fully one thing or the other. Tyrion, Catelyn, Jon, Dany, Sansa, all of these characters who, people either want to deify or villainize, they have all of these conflicting things in them. That's what makes them interesting. That's what makes them an amazing example of humanity. They can have moments of bravery or they can fuck up, and that's okay because they're human. Sir Waymar Royce dies in this scene. He does not make it out, but he doesn't die as the pig-headed brat that we are introduced to. He dies as a man of the Night's Watch. In June 2023, I was unemployed, depressed, and had a lot of free time on my hands, which led me to picking up a book that I'd been avoiding for years. And when I did, Sir Waymar Royce moved me. He showed me that humanity is messy, but aspirational. And that is what I think these books are. Okay, bye.